Okay. I don't care whether it's on speaker view or gallery view. Whatever you want to do is fine. So.
Okay. I think it's on speaker view.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Whatever. Alrighty. Well, if somebody else hops on, that's fine. And if not, they can always catch the recording. That's no big deal either. So what I decided is I think that we're just going to go through as far as covering probably through, I think chapter 8, maybe 7. I'll have to look. I don't know. I felt like as far as reading wise, it wasn't that big of a deal to read, but I think it's going to be hard to cover as far as discussion, that many chapters in one 30-minute Zoom. So I think what we'll probably do is we'll probably add another 4th session and do the book in 4 chunks instead of 3, which means the last one will be the first half of November. And then we'll take a break until after January, and maybe we'll start another one after the first of the year. So if you have read through chapter 10, then you're ahead. Yay! And so I think that when I was going through and doing notes, I think it just was a good stopping place. So I think we'll just stop. I'll have to look. There's 7 or 8, but all right. So what do you guys think so far?
It was really
a great book.
Are you taking lots of notes, highlighting lots of things?
I like to highlight.
I ended up getting the Kindle version, which I never do ebooks like ever, but I needed this one super fast to be able to break the book up and decide how many chapters we were doing, and I didn't want to wait for Amazon. So I got the ebook. So I don't really like those Kindle books because I like to be able to take notes and highlight and stuff. So anyway, but I did. And so there's a highlight feature where you can highlight text on the Kindle books. And so I did that, but I still like actual books better. But so anyway, I am going to be looking down at my highlighted book here. All right. So let's go ahead and just start with chapter 1. I felt like there was so much material that we could talk about in the first, few chapters, but I'm not going to reread it because you've already read it. So it seems silly to just, I was watching another Zoom training that they did on this book. It was like a book study, and I felt like the girl that led it, she pretty much just read out of the book for the whole time. And I was like, that's kind of goofy because if we've read the book, then what's the point? So I guess it'd be good for people that hadn't read it. I didn't really highlight a whole lot in chapter 1. Did you guys have any notes that you took in the first chapter? It wasn't that I didn't think it was good. I just didn't really, nothing was just so in your face that I felt the need to highlight it.
Yeah,
but if you have something from chapter 1, I mean, a lot of it he's just talking about, how as kids we kind of have unlimited potential and we just see so much possibility, and then people kind of tamper that down with what's realistic and what's not. And, I think part of that goes back to the training that Lori Harrison did, and we talked a little bit about that. And I kind of fall into that category sometimes with wanting things to be goals and dreams, like to be practical, like what's realistic, what's practical. And I oftentimes limit my own potential because that might not be realistic or practical. So, I mean, I could understand some of what he was saying in that aspect. Did you guys have anything else from the first chapter?
No.
No. Okay, so in chapter 2, I highlighted this part that says, the human brain, that incredibly powerful personal computer center that each of us has, is capable of doing for you anything reasonable that you would like it to do. But you have to know how to treat it. If you treat it just right and carefully, give it the right directions, it will do the right thing. It will work for you in the right way, but if you give your mental computer the wrong directions, it will act on those wrong directions. It will continue to respond to the negative programming that you and the rest of the world have been giving it without even being aware of it. So, I mean, he talks a lot more about this in the coming chapters, but it's just kind of like, basically, we can determine what we want our brain to accomplish for us. It's just a matter of how we and other people program it. So it's interesting. I mean, we think so much of our potential is outside of our control, when in reality, he's saying it's actually all in our control. It's just a matter of what we tell ourselves. What did you guys think about the number of times that we hear as a child growing up, no? What did he say? 148,000 times an average person hears the word no. If you're in a, if you're in a household where it's moderately positive, you might only hear it 100,000 times. 100,000 is still a ton. Versus if you were to hear those positive statements, I'm trying to find that number, what that was, but it was something like a few hundred or something, a few hundred compared to 148,000 no's. The times that we're told we can, or that we're capable of something, it's like a tiny percentage. Do you feel like with your kids you say no a lot?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I've caught it even this week, thinking about how many times I'm telling them no and trying to figure out how can I word this differently so it's not just no. How can I change it? I haven't got it all figured out yet, but yeah.
I would do something like that. And just when I was teaching in the classroom, it's so default as a human, I think, to look for the things that people are doing wrong and trying to correct their wrong behavior, when it's such a more, beneficial outcome when you are looking for the things that people are doing right and, praising when people do good things. And then I think when you look for those good things, you're not looking for the no's, so then you're not really saying no as much. And that's a constant reminder. But yeah, this definitely had me thinking, how often do I say that to my kids? And a big eye-opener to me was, I am the way that I am because of all the programming that I've had. And here I am, I have these little humans in my care, and I want to be aware of how I am programming them for their futures, which was really an eye-opener for me. So, I mean, the one line I underlined said, that means that as much as 75% or more of our programming is the wrong kind. And that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I highlighted that part too. As much as 77% of everything we think is negative, counterproductive, and works against us. What did you also think about the fact that medical researchers have said that as much as 75% of all illnesses are self-induced? Yikes, that would ruffle some feathers, I think. Mm-hmm. Because no one wants to think that they're making themselves sick. But that's kind of crazy, isn't it? 75%?
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting too. I have a little person, I think, who's trying to get in my door. Okay, so he says then, repetition is a convincing argument. Eventually, we believe what others told us and what we told ourselves most. We begin to live out the picture of ourselves we had created in our minds. So that's it's interesting, because somewhat, it is somewhat what we tell ourselves, but there is so much to be said for what other people have said to us. I grew up with a father who told me, he and my mom divorced when I was young, but he told me, every time we were with him, pretty much, that all he ever wanted was a boy, and all he got was 3 girls. If I heard that once, I heard it hundreds of times. And so while what he said was, I wanted a boy, I didn't want 3 girls, what I think I heard was, I didn't want you. So, you know, so you hear those kinds of things, and then that becomes, I'm not wanted. And so then that's an inner, you know, that's an inner voice that you hear. And then who knows how many times that comes into play when you're in a situation where you're like, oh, they don't want me here. You know, I shouldn't be here because they, you know, I'm not wanted, you know, and so then you know, whatever those messages are, I know, Karen, we've talked about that before. And, you know, you had some teasing and some kids making fun of you when you were younger. And so then we've talked about how that even now comes into play in different relationships because of those things that were said then kind of just became that dialogue. And now, you know, you hear those same thoughts. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so here's a question for you. This is a question that he asked, but I'm going to ask it to you. Why is it then that some accomplish nearly any task more easily than others, achieve their goals more readily, live their lives more fully? Could it be that those who appear to be luckier, let's say in this case, more successful, faster ranking up, whatever, could it be that those who appear to be luckier than the rest actually only gotten a little better programming, or perhaps they have learned how to erase their old negative programming and replace it with something better? So I thought about that. Sometimes it seems like some people are just, it just comes easier to them. Why is that person seemingly doing the same amount of work I am, or started at the same time I did, or whatever? Why are they so much further ahead than me? Why are they zooming past me? Why are they so much more successful? And so then this has made me question, is it because of the programming they received? Was it different than what I received? Or have they been able to overcome those negative thought patterns and replace them by positive affirmations, and I haven't gotten there yet? What do you think? What do you think when you read that paragraph? What do you think?
No, I definitely think that's true. I know that for me, I go to things like I went to the Sonia Dudley training that she did on mindset when she was in Nashville, and you walk out of there going, "Oh my goodness, I can do this. I can make my affirmations. I can do all these things, and I can accomplish this." And then it's so easy to just kind of get back. I come home and things are back to normal, whatever normal is for me. And it doesn't, like, things don't change. But other people walk out of that and it completely changed for them. So I think it is a lot of being stuck in a rut. And I come home from convention even, and oh my goodness, I'm going to do this. And then it doesn't change because I didn't figure out how to actually make it change for me.
I know that I've often been on the other side of looking at those people and thinking, well, it's easier for them. Like there's something about them that makes it easier, you know. And this is an eye-opener that it's not them, that it's me. And maybe, like you said, that they have gotten out of, either had better programming or overcome negative programming and have been able to get past that. But it's not about what other people are able to do and how easy their success story is or how smooth it was for them. It's solely about me and what I'm telling myself and what I think I'm capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's what he says next. You will become what you think about most. Your success or failure in anything, large or small, will depend on your programming, both what you accept from others and what you say to yourself. It's no longer a success theory. It's a simple but powerful fact. Neither luck nor desire has the slightest thing to do with it. It makes no difference Whether you consciously accept it or not, the brain simply believes what you tell it most. And what you tell it about you, it will create. It has no choice. So I've never thought about that before until I read this book. I've never thought about that before. But basically, I mean, he's just saying the brain will believe whatever you tell it. It doesn't matter if it's a lie. It doesn't matter whether it's true. Anything that you repeat over and over again, your brain will believe just because that's the way it's programmed. So it makes sense when you think about, you see these, do you remember these stories where there are these cults and these leaders that are able to just completely brainwash like masses of people? And you think, well, goodness, how easy is that to do? If they hear the same thing over and over again, they just believe it. And it's not even that, it's not even that it's true. And it's like, they could even kind of know that it's not true, but their brain doesn't know it's not true because they've heard it so many times. And that's the same with us. I can know without a shadow of a doubt the truth about myself, but still believe the lies I tell myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I really thought about it, I would be like, okay, that's probably not true. But I believe it because I say it. Okay, so moving on to chapter 3. This touches a little bit on what you were just saying, Jen, about, so even though we may have had good intentions, it's back to the old way, just like before, living life as we always have, maybe even getting a little ahead or getting by, and then we wonder why we're not doing as well as we think we should. So we have these good intentions of making all these changes and doing things differently, and then we don't. And he talks about the reason for that, and the 3 reasons that he feels like, all of these authors that write all these, millions of self-help books, why it's not actually getting to the root of the problem. Not that it's not helpful advice, but it's not getting to the issue. And so he listed all those book titles, all these different positive, be creative, think big, control stress, all these, books, but they don't have permanence because they're all temporary solutions. They don't actually talk about how the brain works or possess any kind of knowledge about how the wiring of the brain works. So, and they don't address self-talk. Okay, so I loved his analogy in chapter 4 to how our brain is like, and how our bodies are like a computer. I loved that. So where he talked about how the computer keyboard is how we display information. I'm sorry, the
screen.
Sorry, the screen. Yeah, the screen, the monitors, how we display actions to others, and just kind of how we show what's inside of us through this monitor or screen. The keyboard being how the input is taken in, just like you would type an essay or you would type in programming on the keyboard. That's how we're taking in the information. The things we're seeing, the things we're hearing, all of that, including the things other people are telling us or saying to us. That's all input that we're programming into our computer system. And then the hard drive being all of the information that our subconscious mind stores, everything we've experienced or heard. And so whatever's programmed into our own personal mental computer is permanently programmed unless we erase that programming and reprogram it. So the other section that I took out of this chapter that just wowed me, and I don't know, maybe it was just me, but it was talked about how we have all of these switches in our brain, like walls of switches. So imagining one wall of switches governs our health, and another one controls our emotions and our planning and our hopes and dreams and how we act and move and all those autonomic things like breathing and heartbeat. And then when a command is transmitted, the proper switches function in that area within a fraction of a second. Okay, so what he's talking about there are those electric impulses and those neurotransmitters that are firing in the brain. Okay, so what we know about the brain is that in order for those to function well, we need glutathione, which is a neurochemical that helps with those switches firing in the brain. And we need those neurotransmitter chemicals like serotonin and dopamine and all of those brain chemicals, GABA, and all of those things that help our brain with the switches. Okay, so what he's talking about is the actual how the brain works. But we have to think about this from a health perspective too. If someone's health is poor, if their gut health is poor, your gut is your second brain. The vagus nerve runs from the gut to the brain and moves neurons, moves all of those chemicals to the brain. If your gut is not producing the serotonin, the melatonin, the GABA, the dopamine, then your switches are not going to be functioning like they should. So no matter how much positive self-talk is going on, if you're not healthy, you're going to struggle. And I think that that's interesting. And that was fascinating to me because I know I struggled with negativity so badly for years. And it wasn't until I started Plexus that I feel like I've been able to even wrap my brain around trying to reprogram that self-talk. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that play out in anyone else that you know, or anyone who maybe is struggling with depression or who has health issues, but then that also affects how they talk about life and themselves and others? And
I think my mom would be an example of that. I mean, just her attitude at work and the way that she feels like she can handle the stress of her job. I mean, she has people at work that didn't even know she was taking Plexus. Like, you just seem like a happier person. You seem like like you handle the stress better. You're like the motivator of the office. And they just were like, what's different? And it was, I mean, the only thing that she changed was Plexus. And she really thinks that she's just getting her gut healthier, and it's really helping her become more confident in her job and take things in stride and not let things bother her and let the stresses of stuff like that get to her. So, I mean, that would be, I guess, an example.
well, because he says here, and I'm not even going to try to read some of these words, but the brain's infinitesimally small chemical receiving centers, so those would be like neurotransmitter chemicals, respond to almost imperceptible electrochemical signals, which deliver nearly unmeasurable but highly potent chemical substances to our brain, our central nervous system, and our will affect everything we do. So all of that to say that I think if you don't have the brain chemistry and those neurotransmitter chemicals firing properly, I think you're going to have a really hard time trying to make your brain function in a way that is healthy when it comes to your thoughts and how you respond and that what you say to yourself. That's my personal opinion, but I see how they're so interconnected. Okay. All right, let's move on. In chapter 5, he gives a good scenario of how when he was younger, he wanted to play a musical instrument, and he overheard the band director. Well, he wasn't accepted into the band, and then he overheard the band director telling the teacher that he not only would he never play an instrument, but he had no musical ability whatsoever. So he said it worked. I heard from someone else that I had no musical ability, and I believed it. I actually accepted as fact that I had no musical talent and I never would. And it wasn't until years later that I finally got up enough courage to rent a piano, learn some notes, and play it when no one was around to remind me that I couldn't play. So this, it wasn't until I read this that it reminded me of an experience. I tried out for volleyball when I was in 7th grade. I probably wasn't good at, well, let's just say, I'm quite sure I wasn't good at volleyball, clearly, because of the outcome. But I tried out for 7th grade volleyball, and they had to cut, well, they didn't have to. They cut 2 people from the volleyball tryouts. Honestly, would it have hurt to just let me sit the bench? I mean, really? I mean, it was 2 people, okay, for real. But, so this other girl named Lisa and me were the only ones that got cut from volleyball. Now, no one had to tell me that I had no athletic ability whatsoever. I would never, become a pro athlete. This wasn't anything that needed to be said. But the message in, I'm cutting 2 people from the 7th grade volleyball team, that was the only time I'd ever tried out for any sport, by the way. And the last time I ever tried out for any sport. So never again, in any other category, in any other sport, did I ever try out again, all through high school. So did you have an experience at all where someone, either directly or you overheard someone say that you weren't good at something or you would never do something?
I did. When I was little, my dad was a pastor. And so as good pastors' kids and family, we sing. That's just kind of what pastors' kids did. Everybody had to sing. And so my brother and sister and I would sing. And we did it a lot. Like, we would even go to other churches and sing. There was a local TV station that we were on that we sang. Until the day my mom told me that I did okay, but I would never sing as good as my brother and sister. Nobody heard me sing again. To this day, nobody hears me sing. My husband would disagree, but I won't let anybody hear me sing. Yep. It's important what you tell your kids.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience when I was doing children's ministry, and I was in college at the time, but it was a group of kids who told me that I couldn't carry a tune and I should stop trying.
They are pretty, they tend to be honest.
I didn't sing a lot before. Yeah, I didn't sing a lot before that, but I definitely haven't been singing after that. So I hear you. Karen, you at all?
I'm having a hard time coming up with an example, but I'm sure I've had times like that.
But nothing really.
No, nothing.
Nothing really stood out to you then.
I mean, and I think about this a lot, but it's kind of an opposite thing. I'll never forget when growing up, I have a twin, and so we were always compared growing up. And my sister was a neat freak. She wanted everything clean, and I hated being clean. I was a slob. And I remember my mom, this doesn't really apply though because it's opposite. My mom told my grandmother that I was a complete slob and that Kathy was the neat one, and it just freaked me out. I hated being told that. So I kind of rebelled, and now I'm the neat one and my sister's the slob. Not a slob, but she's just not as clean as I am in particular. That's kind of opposite. I think she kind of conditioned me to be like, no, I refuse to be known as the messy one. So that doesn't really, I'm having a hard time coming up with an example, but.
That's funny though. Okay. So then he gave the example of the guy named Mike Vance who, he overheard someone say about him that he was very creative and he would grow up to do things that were creative. And then, he actually did end up going on to do something that was in line with those words that were spoken to him. So I know I remember my grandma always saying to me when I was little, I just know that someday you're gonna be a leader. I just know it. Now, she could have said, Ashley, you are so bossy, it is ridiculous. But she didn't. She said, you're going to be a leader. I just can't wait to see what God does in your life. I can't wait to see, God has great things in store for you. And I just know that you're going to be a leader someday. That's what she said to me. Okay, so, and I totally forgot about that until I read this chapter. But yeah, she could have said, dude, you need to stop being so bossy. Because that's what my mom said to me was, you're so bossy. You need to stop being so bossy. So sometimes it's just a matter of word choice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to skip. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'm going to skip forward to chapter 6. And so this was something that really stuck out to me, and I highlighted this, and it is probably on a different page than yours, so I couldn't even tell you what page, but it's right at the beginning of the chapter. And he says, most of our self-talk is unconscious. We're not even aware of it. And at times our self-talk comes in feelings that can't quite be put into words. Okay, so then a few chapters later, this was just phenomenal. The more we believe about something, the more we will accept other ideas which are similar. The more files we have in our mental filing cabinet which tell us something about ourselves, the more we will attract and accept other thoughts and ideas which support and prove what is already stored in our files. The more you think about yourself in a certain way, the more you will think about yourself in that certain way. The more you think about anything in a certain way, the more you will believe that that is how it really is. The mind works in that way because the brain always tries to tie any new thing you think to something you already believe. Okay, so obviously this has so much to do with, let's say I always tell myself, if I always tell myself I'm clumsy and then I drop something, I'll be like, oh, see, there I go again. I knew I was clumsy there. That just proves it. So anytime something happens that I can draw back to that thing that I already think about myself, or I don't know, so if I, have been told I'm bossy, well, the next time someone says, gosh, you're bossy, I'm like, see, I knew it. I mean, we tie those things back into those thoughts that we already believe about ourselves. But how true is this when it comes to plexus? Those people that are already skeptical. They already think that it's bogus. They already think it's a scheme or whatever. They will go out of their way to find evidence that proves their point. So the next time so-and-so's sister's cousin tried it and it didn't work, oh, see, I knew it didn't work. I just knew, I knew that stuff was I knew all that stuff people were saying wasn't true. Those are the people that are going down and hunting for the bad reviews on websites to just because they want to back up that reinforcement of that's what they thought already. They're looking for confirmation of what they already believe. So I don't know. Did either one of you highlight that part? I just stuck out to me for some reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer you believe something, the harder it is to change that belief. The longer you have bought the thought, the truer it is. So if you have something that goes way back to your childhood that was said to you, it's going to be a lot harder to change than something that might have been said to you last week.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So All right. Now, Jen, you probably don't, you might have done this because you went to the Sonia Dudley training, but a while back, I had Karen write down a list of all of the negative thoughts, self-talk that she says to herself in any given week. And she just kept a running notebook of all these things that she says to herself whenever they popped up. And that was kind of the beginning of how we worked on her creating her affirmations. Have you ever done something like that where you just kind of kept track of all of those negative thoughts?
No, but I could see it being a very interesting project. Kind of
well,
scary,
I had her do that instead of just pulling arbitrary affirmations out of thin air. I had her start by taking those negative thoughts and then working on developing her affirmations from those old programming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and that's what we talked about at the Ruby training at convention too, that the Ruby breakout group, I think it was Helen McFadden talked about the affirmations. And she always tells people to keep a list of all those negative self-talk. And then she has them work on converting those into positive affirmations. So that's what I would like our homework to be for this next 2 weeks. In addition to keeping reading in the next few chapters, is to start working on those negative statements and keeping a list of those. So I know we're going to cut off on time. I'm going to start another group. I'm going to start like a Facebook group for this, and that's where we'll put this video and any other things that come up between now and the next session. So I'm going to start a book club Facebook group that I'll add people to. So that way we can post homework or anything else that comes up. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for hopping on tonight. And Karen, if you have a chance to get that uploaded or whatever, just hang on to it until I get that group started, and then we'll put it in there.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Ashley.
And I'll put the chapters for what we're going to do for the next session in the group too, because we'll just recalculate it.
Okay.
Alrighty?
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Night, y'all.
See you later, girls.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.